May we now hear from the Department of Finance? Secretary Dominguez, go ahead.
Much. Senate President Vicente Soto III, Minority Floor Leader Franklin Drilon, Senator Ralph Recto, Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Francis Pangilinan, Senator Cynthia Villar, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Senator Richard Gordon, Senator Aquilino Pimentel III, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Panfilo Lacson, Senator Nancy Binay, Senator Bongo, Senator Joel Villanueva, Secretary Avisado, Secretary Galvez, Secretary Duque, Secretary Locsin, fellow workers in government, good morning. The pandemic we have been battling since March of last year has been a contingency we could not have imagined, let alone provisioned for. To meet the health emergency, the government had to quickly mobilize resources to support our health system, procure test kits in the millions, and deliver cash support to our most vulnerable citizens. All these required higher deficit spending that was magnified with the reduction in revenue flows due to lockdowns that slowed down economic activity. Over the past year and a half, however, we never ran out of cash resources, notwithstanding the large spending bill that we incurred because of the pandemic. We covered the deficit with urgent borrowing, mainly with our development partners offering us very good rates and terms. Despite the temporary surge in borrowings, our debt levels remain manageable, and we did not lose our exemplary credit rating. This is due to the fiscal prudence and the tax and structural reforms which we together implemented since 2016. Our high credit ratings enabled us to access emergency financing at lower rates, tight spreads, and longer repayment periods. This year, our budget gap is expected to widen to 1.6 trillion pesos, about 36% higher than last year. This is about 9.3% of our GDP. The larger budget deficit will require 3.1 trillion pesos in borrowings in 2021, roughly the same level as last year. These borrowings will be sourced mainly from the local markets at around 75% and 25% from abroad. Our total debt as a share of GDP is expected to rise to 58.7% in 2021. This figure was 54.6% in 2020 and a historic low of 39.6% in 2019. Despite the increase, our prudent debt management gave us the fiscal headroom to deal with the pandemic. Thus, the anticipated temporary rise in debt remains within the prescribed bounds of fiscal viability. Living and dealing with COVID-19 is a multi-mile marathon, not a 100-yard sprint. We need to continue exercising prudence in managing our financial affairs. We need to protect our fiscal sustainability and ensure that we have an ample war chest for this long battle. Financing our vaccines purchases is a specific subset of our overall fiscal management. Our total budget for the procurement of vaccines amounts to 88.6 billion pesos. This should be enough to procure about 148 million doses and inoculate at least 70 million Filipinos, or 100% of our adult population. Of the 88.6 billion peso funding, 2.5 billion peso forms part of the budget of the Department of Health under the 2021 General Appropriations Act. Meanwhile, the 10 billion pesos are funds under the Bayanihan II law allowed for the COVID-19 vaccination program. The remaining 3.26 billion pesos comes from other sources in the 2021 national budget and the Bayanihan 2. Around 57.3 billion pesos are sourced through concessional loans from our multilateral partners such as the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Up to 12.7 billion pesos will come from other financing sources as may be necessary, while the 2.8 billion pesos as mentioned are from the contingency funds. To ensure more stable vaccine supply, a portfolio of 6 vaccine varieties is now being negotiated or has been negotiated with manufacturers. These vaccines include Pfizer, Novavax, Moderna, Sinovac, Johnson & Johnson, and Sputnik 5. As you may note from the enumeration of sources of funds, the bulk of our ready financing for vaccine procurement comes from loans extended by our multilateral partners. We deliberately chose this financing strategy to ensure 2 things. First, that the vaccines we buy are internationally accepted and have passed the stringent criteria for safety and effectiveness. Second, that the vaccine procurement is totally transparent. The loans follow a direct payment scheme as a disbursement method. This means that the loan proceeds will be directly coursed from the lender to the vaccine manufacturers upon delivery. Using our loans alone, we have so far contracted a total of 33.5 million doses worth about $639.8 million US dollars. This could inoculate close to 17 million Filipinos. The amount comprises 53% of the total available funding under our vaccine loans. Additionally, we have reserved a total of 56 million doses through binding term sheets which will be finalized through the execution of supply agreements with vaccine manufacturers. In sum, we are assured of around 89.5 million doses of vaccines using our foreign loans. This will be sufficient to inoculate at least 44.75 million Filipinos. In accordance with the terms of the signed supply agreements, we have already paid a total amount of 243.25 million US dollars. On top of these, the government is securing additional doses through the COVAX facility. The current guidance from COVAX estimates that up to 44 million doses will be donated to the Philippines. The decision taken during the G7 summit this weekend for the rich countries to donate 1 billion doses to COVAX could significantly increase our allocation. Moreover, Japan Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi just announced this morning the donation of Japan-made AstraZeneca vaccines to some countries, including the Philippines. We have not yet been officially informed of the number of doses that are going to be donated by Japan. Added to this is the 1 million doses of Sinovac vaccines donated by the Chinese government. Using our regular budget, the national government has secured a total of 15.5 million doses of vaccines in the amount of 176.5 million US dollars. In sum, the government is assured of at least 149.83 million doses of vaccines through binding term sheets and supply agreements backed by our foreign loans, our regular budget, and donations from other countries and the COVAX facility. Out of this number, more than 12.7 million has so far been delivered to the Philippines. Local governments and private sector groups will even complement the national government's vaccine procurement. The COVID-19 vaccination program law has in fact allowed them to purchase up to 24.9 million doses. This will bring our indicative total of vaccines to about 174.7 million doses. Adding those in the pipeline, the vaccine deliveries could reach more than 204 million doses this year. This is the second horizon. There is a second horizon we have to look at, however. We might need an allocation of about 25 billion pesos to cover the inoculation of children aged 12 years old and above. Pending confirmation of our health authorities, we are preparing for the purchase of booster shots of one dose for roughly 85 million adults and teenagers. This could cost roughly 60 billion pesos. The proposal is to include such supplement amount in the 2022 budget. At the moment, we have enough money to fully scale up our vaccination program to the end of the current year. Thank you.
So we recognize and give the floor to Senator Pamilo Lacson. Senator Lacson, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. I will limit my questions to the vaccination program and the corresponding budgetary requirements. I will use as my reference the DOH website, particularly table number 5, described as funding sources for COVID-19 vaccine deployment program and corresponding amounts. It says here, and I suppose this is called from the 2021 GAA, no, 82.5 billion, ito po yung total appropriations under the 2021 GAA, broken down as 70 billion for vaccines under the program fund. I suppose this is exclusively for the procurement of vaccines. The rest, 10 billion Bayanihan 2, described as under the regular budget of the DOH, logistics and other supplies. So combination ito ng procurement ng vaccines at saka logistics and administrative expenses. 2.5 billion, again, under the regular budget of the DOH for logistics and administration expenses. So, of course, hindi naman kasama yung 2.8 billion na kinumit ng Presidente from the Presidential Contingent Fund. Anyway, hindi pa naman ito na obligate, hindi pa rin na disperse. So, I'll just limit my questions to the 70 billion. And I'd like to address my question or questions to either DBM or DOF. Yung 70 billion ng program fund, wherein $1.2 billion or the equivalent of 58.4 billion pesos. This was, I think, corrected by Secretary Dominguez as the equivalent of 57.3 billion pesos in his presentation. Covered by borrowings sourced from bilateral and multilateral agreements as well as domestic loans. No, so ang breakdown ito 500 million from the World Bank, 400 million sa ADB, another 300 million yung HIL2 loan from AIIB. So that's 1.2 billion. So my question is, since the basis or reference is the 70 billion peso unprogrammed pesos under the unprogrammed fund, and the national government has only borrowed 1.2 billion or equivalent to 57.3 billion, how or where will you source the 16 or the 12.7 billion pesos na shortfall? Either DOF or DBM. Kasi pag ang program fund, kailangan ito source mo from loans or from savings, di ba? So meron tayong shortfall na 12.7 billion pesos. Kasi ang nahiram lang natin is 57.3. And under the GAA, 70 billion yung sa program fund. So interested lang ako saan nyo kukunin yung shortfall na 12.7 billion pesos. Secretary Dominguez or Secretary Abisado, please.
think Secretary Dominguez will be in a much better position to answer the question po, because they're the ones sourcing out the funds.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Secretary Dominguez. Seksani? I ask this question kasi baka kailangan nyo ng pondo and you will need assistance from the Congress or from the Senate or the Congress of the Philippines. So, kung may pagkukunan, then there's no problem. So, 12.7 billion pesos na shortfall to cover the 70 billion under the unprogrammed fund.
Secretary Dominguez. We see you online. We cannot hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. The 12.7 billion will be sourced through our regular borrowing programs. And our regular borrowing programs are 75% domestically sourced and 25% foreign borrowings.
Yes, Mr. Secretary, are there pending loan applications in relation to the vaccines, to the procurement of the vaccines?
As of now, there are no pending applications.
So, paano natin po isosource yung 12.7 billion?
Oh, those
you
are
start?
will be either sourced through our bond offerings domestically or foreign. That's
Okay,
just our
so
regular borrowing program.
Yes, so this could be the reason why Secretary Galvez during our previous meeting, they were requesting for congressional intercession to fund. You were requesting 25 billion, di ba? To be
Oh, sorry, sir. That 25 billion that he mentioned is additional because the children can now be vaccinated, and those are children from 12 to 15 years old. And that is not in our original plan because our original plan had only adults, and we only have 70 million adults in the Philippines. Now we have another roughly 15 million teenagers. So that was what we were saying. If we are going to do that, we will have to fund that roughly for 15 million, maybe around 25 billion pesos.
you mentioned in your in the press conference last night, parang 20 billion yung kailangan for the 12 to 15 year old Filipino citizens, Mr. Secretary. Anyway,
You know, the
so-
number is the number depends on the vaccine that is recommended for the children, and so far the vaccine recommended is only Pfizer. So it is just an estimate at this point
Okay.
in time because we are not yet the health authorities might have another vaccine. So this is a developing situation.
I understand, Mr. Secretary. Anyway, hindi pa naman kailangan niya sa 2021. I'm particularly concerned or interested in the 12.7 billion kasi yun ang immediately kailangan to procure the additional vaccines that we need, because if we will have to cover during the briefing ang target population natin is 83,829,719, and that requires 167,659,438 doses. In the meantime, to achieve
Yes.
herd immunity of 70% of the target population, we'll be needing, we'll need to vaccinate or inoculate 58,680,803 Filipinos, which is equivalent to, assuming na hindi kasama yung Johnson & Johnson na 1 dose lang, equivalent to 117,361,606 doses. So there's an immediate need for the 12.7 billion pesos, as I mentioned, to cover the 70 billion pesos under the unprogrammed fund. And since there are no
No,
existing or pending, yes, Mr. Secretary.
No, there is no immediate need because the take up is still dependent on the actual deliveries. So the whatever is being delivered is sufficient so far. Now, the additional funding is relatively easy for us to raise. That is, we go to the domestic bond market and we can raise that quite easily in a few weeks' time. We have an authority from the Office of the President to raise sufficient funds this year to cover that. And that will be done, as I said, more or less 75% domestic and 25% foreign.
So even for calendar year 2021, you're confident that you can amply cover the
Oh, yes.
whole amount of 70 billion. That's what you're saying.
Definitely, we are confident on that.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor.
Okay, my next question is, ang nabanggit nyo, 85 billion plus another 20 billion for the 12 to 15 years old. Ano? So
Yes.
that's 105.
Yes.
We're talking of the present budget under the 2021 GAA. So that's 105 billion na should be made available. Ano? So my question is, since ang cover lang ng ang coverage lang ng vaccination, yung vaccines mismo, no, not the other collateral utilization like logistics and administrative expenses. So what will be the legal, or what is the legal cover of the 35 billion? Because 105 billion minus 70 billion, kailangan natin ng legal cover or appropriations under the 2021 GAA for the procurement of vaccines under the unprogrammed fund, di ba?
First of all, sir, what we have legal cover for is 88.6 billion, not 70.
Mr. Secretary, 70 is exclusively for vaccines. That's what I'm saying. The other figures under the 2021 GAA are for logistics, admin,
No,
and
or
probably a
vaccines.
combination of vaccines and other utilization expenses, other expenses.
Yes.
So I am restricting myself or limiting myself to the 70 billion kasi ito yung pwede natin talagang asahan for the vaccination program, for the vaccines. And that's what I am concerned about, no? Because if we have 70 billion that is not yet filled or filled up, kasi kulang pa tayo ng 12.7 billion, and I'm glad that you said you're confident that you can easily raise the shortfall of 12.7 billion pesos. But here comes another figure coming out of the national government na meron pa tayong kailangan na 35 billion. And I'm asking what would be the legal cover for the 35 billion to just to compensate the whole amount of 105 billion.
Yeah, the legal cover essentially is going to be, number one, the excess collections we may have relative to our budget. For instance, collections coming, additional unplanned collections of dividends should be able to cover part of that. Okay, and so far, I believe we already have at least 25 billion pesos excess on that area. But I don't have the exact number, but I think we already have excess collections there. So that is part of the coverage for that. Secondly, and this is really to be very honest with you, not everybody is going to accept the vaccination. We know from surveys that there are probably between 25 to 30% of the adult population who don't want to be vaccinated. And that will be able to cover for the children who want to be vaccinated at the moment. If they wish to change their mind later on, like next year, as I said, we will have to add it to the NEP or the GAA request.
I understand that that's the reality on the ground, Mr. Secretary, but we have to assume that the target population can be accommodated by the vaccines that we are procuring. And I'd like to ask the IATF if that is a correct assumption, that we should prepare really for the target population of 83 million Filipinos, and to achieve herd immunity, 58.6 million Filipinos. So we cannot also assume that the mindset of our of the Filipino people will remain constant, ano? Na merong a certain percentage of the population that are not willing to be vaccinated. That could change, and that's the reason why there is an ongoing information campaign from the IATF and the DOH to really, as I said, get the job done, ano? To inoculate as many Filipinos as we can. So, di ba yun ang target ninyo, Secretary Galvez?
Yes, Senator. Let me just go back in time. No, when we presented this plan, the children, we did not have the vaccination for children was not yet allowed. So it was only allowed a few weeks ago. So we are, as I said, this is a moving plan. So basically, we will probably have to fund another, as I said, around 20 or 25 billion pesos, depending on the vaccination for these additional children of around 15 million. And as I said, the coverage for that will come, number one, from the excess funds that we are at the moment collecting. And number two, and you have to look at the reality on the ground, that not everybody of the 70 million are going to accept the vaccination this year. Okay, the surveys are constant in saying that between 25 and 30% are non-vaxxers.
Thank you. I get it, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so you're saying that we exceeded the target collections, revenue collections, both
Yes, our
tax and
revenue
non-tax.
collection.
By how much, Mr. Secretary?
At the
For
moment,
2021 first?
well, at the moment, I do not know exactly what will be the excess until the end of the year, but for the first 6 months, we already have excess collections from the dividends, the projected dividends. And I think, as I said, give me a little time. I will check the exact number.
I guess it's 2.84 trillion pesos, BIR and customs, as well as non-tax revenues, dividends, fees, and so forth and so on. So 2.84 trillion, but that is only because we adjusted our projected revenues from, I believe, during the DBCC hearing or meeting. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Secretary, no? Ang nakuha kong figure, ang projection natin noong as of December 2020, parang something like 3.25 trillion. But then we made several adjustments. I think there are at least two adjustments made to lower the target or the target revenue collection to something like 2.4 trillion.
2.8.
At 2.8.
Yes, roughly
2.881.
2.8. Roughly 2.8 trillion, yeah. So
Yeah,
we
so-
on the dividends, we have managed to collect more than we had anticipated for the first 6 months of the year. And look, I'm just asking my staff to get the exact amount, and I will get back to you in a few minutes. Sorry, I have it here. No, I'm sorry. I'll get back to you, Mr.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
think we have enough information from the DOF.
Una, magandang tanghali po at nagpapasalamat po tayo sa lahat ng inyong sakripisyo at inyong serbisyo para sa ating bayan. Gusto ko lang iparating sa inyo na we appreciate your sacrifices and service to our people. Let me start by saying and quoting itong labor force survey ng Philippine Statistics Authority. Yung unemployment rate po as of April 2021 ay nasa 8.7%. 8.7%, humigit kumulang 4.14 million ang unemployed. Ito po ay mas mataas compared sa March of 2021 ng PSA, 7.1%. 3.4 million lang po nun. So tumaas po ng 4.14 million. So naniniwala po ako na napakahalaga nitong deliberation natin because susi sa pagbabalik sa normal na pagtatrabaho ng ating mga kababayan ang pagpapabakuna. Kaya nais po nating matumbok sa hearing na ito kung ano po yung mga kadahilanan at ano pa yung mga po pwede nating gawin para makatulong. Again, as our Senate President made mention a while ago, this is not to criticize. We are not here to criticize. We are here to help. We are here to find solutions and help in any way we can. Let me start by propounding questions raised kanina by Senator Ping tungkol dun sa budget. Siguro kay Secretary Dominguez ng DOF. Nagpapasalamat ho tayo, binanggit nyo at this year, okay ho tayo, we're good with it. And then the 25 billion, mukhang hindi tayo mamumroblema. But you made mention, this is only for the 12 and 15 years of age. So ibig sabihin, pag nilakihan po yung range at binaba po doon sa mga bata, for example, 5, 8 years old, lalaki din po ito. Is that a correct assessment, sir?
Yes, Mr. Senator, this is a moving target, okay? Thank you. So we have to plan as the knowledge comes to us. So we are planning on that basis. That's why towards the end of my talk, I said we have to spend probably next year another 60 billion for the booster shot.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
Secretary.
I'm at this moment I'm trying to summarize a chart that you want. Okay, the chart will show what we have, what we are getting from three sources. Okay, the three sources are COVAX, donations, and what we bought. Okay, now from what we bought, there are two subsets. What we bought with our own money and what we bought borrowing money. Okay, so we will get the total of that. And then we will add there how much we might have to buy for the 15 to 20, 15, the teenagers.
12 to 15.
Yes, the teenagers. And then we will also estimate how much we have to buy next year for a booster shot, a possible booster shot. So we are just planning what we know, okay? Now, another thing, as I mentioned also in my talk, we are also getting a donation from Japan. This just came this morning. This was just announced this morning. So that's another, probably, I don't really know the number at this moment, how much the donation will be. We are also getting a donation from the US. which they announced they were giving 500 million around the world. So we are putting these numbers together as the knowledge comes. So some are hard numbers, some are not hard numbers. Okay.
I'm glad that you made mention, Secretary, of a moving plan, no? And
Yes.
we are here to anticipate also yung
Yes.
future needs ho natin. So somehow you're proposing, sir, some sort of a multi-year budgeting system, multi-year appropriations
Yes.
in the coming 2021, 22. Yun po yung tinutumbok natin, right?
Yes, but let me warn you, we don't know everything about the pandemic. It's
Yes.
not like planning a road, okay? It's not like planning infrastructure. We don't know this pandemic. It may have a different variety. It may require another kind of vaccine. We don't know, okay?
And actually,
That's why, by the way, that's why I also suggested to the president and the IATF last night that perhaps we should start planning not on dealing with this as a pandemic, but dealing with this as an endemic problem. Something that's going to be with us for more than 1 or 2 years. So
Agreed.
to do that, I think all of us have to sit down and discuss what the way forward is.
And that's the reason,
Unfortunately,
Secretary.
not all the knowledge is available.
That's the reason, Secretary, why we are asking this question. Agree, no? Endemic. And for
Yes.
example, yung cost ba will remain because there was a New York Post article that Pfizer announced that it may charge more for the vaccine shots at the end of the pandemic. So we have to anticipate that. Now, are there any commitments from vaccine manufacturers that the cost will be the same?
Sir,
Well, at this point in time, we know what we bought, okay? We know how much we paid, okay? Or how much we contracted for. I don't know what the cost of the booster shot will be. At this point, I'm just estimating, okay, that it will be 1 dose of Pfizer. Maybe they will charge us more, maybe they will charge us less. At this point, we're not sure. But we are trying to plan as the information becomes available. Believe me, Senator, we are thinking about this every day.
Yes, and we are here to help, sir. That's why we are
Thank
asking
you.
these questions.
Maybe the Secretary of Finance has been raising his hand. Baka po siya pwede niya kami mabigyan ng mas accurate information, Mr. Secretary.
all right,
Thank
Secretary Dominguez, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. First of all, Mr. Senator, I just texted you a chart. Can you put it on the board? That shows how much we have already contracted, okay? How much came as donations, how much were purchased from the GAA, how much were purchased through loans, how much are coming through the private sector, and how much are coming through the LGUs. The total is 184,733,561 doses. Okay, that is contracted. This can cover a population of 95,366,781 people. Okay. The contracted value, obviously, the donated is 0. Okay. So the purchase is there, and from the LGUs is also there. So the contracted value is 73,555,518,120 pesos. Okay? So the total appropriations we have is 88.6 billion. So it is covered. Okay? This amount is covered. So these are the figures. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Senator, we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, signed with the suppliers. Now, this non-disclosure agreement is not our doing. This is the requirement of the suppliers, and we cannot disclose trade secrets, and including in the trade secrets are the pricing. We cannot disclose that publicly without violating the non-disclosure agreement. So let me just say that the cost of if you take the entire cost of the vaccines, okay, the average cost per dose is 398 pesos, okay, on the average. If you take the average cost removing COVAX and the donations, it is 568 pesos per dose. If you look at the average cost of what the GAA cost is 543 pesos. Okay. Now the average cost so far per dose of the amounts for that were purchased using the loans is 515 pesos per dose. Okay. So the logistics cost per dose is roughly 48 pesos per dose. And the the logistics cost, it's around 48 pesos. So these are the numbers that we can disclose, sir.
All right.
All right, I hope that's good enough. It's good enough over here. Go ahead, Senator Leon.
Yes, maraming salamat po. So, at least, dun po sa presentation ng Secretary of Finance, ang average price per dose is 515 pesos on the average. Taking into account both what was in the purchase price and the donated vaccines. Is that correct, sir?
No. On the average, sir, of all the doses that we have contracted, it is 398 pesos, including the donated. Now, if you want to know the price of the cost of the average without the donation, excluding the donations, it's 566.
566 without the donation.
Yes, okay. Now,
So in
if
other
you want
words-
to know the price per dose which we paid for out of the GAA, it is 543 pesos. And if you want to know the price of what we financed through the loans is 515 pesos.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
Just for the discussion, let's just take the 568 per dose.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. 500. So that where is the source of the funding to me is another issue at this point, but
Yes.
it's not that critical now. Basta
Yeah.
the cost is 568 now.
Yeah.
That is why
66.
Now, sorry.
566.
Then you add another 48 pesos for the
Yes.
logistics.
Okay, I understand that. So
Yeah.
566 plus 48.
So
Is the
roughly
total.
600 pesos, okay? Roughly.
Roughly, okay. Just for discussion, 600 pesos, including logistics. Now,
Yeah, what we paid for, okay?
did I hear you correctly, sir, that that a non-disclosure agreement prevents us from telling the people how much is the cost of the vaccines that we are purchasing from public funds?
At this point in time, sir, we are prevented by the NDA, which is imposed upon us by the suppliers from disclosing the individual prices of the vaccines. Whether it is from public funds or from public funds. That is the, yes, that is the NDA. Okay, now we did not invent this NDA. In fact, they are the ones who imposed. They would not even talk to us if we did not sign the NDA.
Yes, I understand that fully, but from our end, as you are aware, Mr. Secretary, the
Yes.
Constitution requires audit by COA. The Constitution requires transparency. How
Yes.
are we proposing to comply with the constitutional requirement with this NDA or non-disclosure agreements you have signed? What I am saying is, if you will allow me to finish, Mr. Secretary. Yes, I remember that in a previous discussion with here in this committee, we conceded that on the position of Secretary Galvez that the non-disclosure of the terms being discussed would be to the public interest. That's why we did not insist. Although my notes indicate that in January 2021, Secretary Galvez committed that once the agreements were signed, he says, quote, we the exact as we firm up the. I must emphasize that we have already signed agreements. I am talking about the contracts, agreements with Sinovac, with Sputnik, with Moderna, wherein public funds are already committed. I am not talking about Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, or Novavax. I'm just focusing on these three because these are the actual fact that we face today. I repeat, na sa ating saligang batas po ay kailangan transparency. At sa ating saligang batas, itong mga kontratang ito ay dapat i-audit ng COA. Ngayon, how do you have insisted on the non-disclosure agreement for purpose of this session? I asked the question, paano po i-audit ng COA ito?
Mr. Senator, this is a public forum. We cannot disclose it publicly. Now, if COA wants to audit us, it is open for audit. That's number one. And Mr. Senator, I also personally designed the financing of this involving ADB, involving AIIB, and involving World Bank as a double check. Because they will not pay for that if they see that we are overpaying. Because the banks are a second check for us. You know, I trust my colleagues, but I verify. Okay? And under this system, we will verify from the loans, the amounts we are borrowing, and we are using our banks to verify that. And we are using our banks also to make sure that we are not buying vaccines that are not approved internationally.
Mr. Secretary, I want to make clear, wala po akong sinasabing may nagnakaw. Maliwanag po yan.
No.
Tinatanong ko lang kung magkano ba dahil sa ito'y obligasyon natin bilang mga senador, obligasyon natin kung paano natin ginagastos ang kanilang pera at kaya ito po yung ating tinatanong kung magkano ba ang bili natin nitong mga gamot, mga injection na ito. You are saying that you cannot make a disclosure because of a non-disclosure agreement. So, but you're saying at the same time that you can reveal it, not not reveal it to the Senate and the public. I do not see the validity of that distinction, Mr. Secretary. I'm sorry. Why is COA allowed to know what these costs are, and the senators are not allowed to find out when we speak as representatives of the people?
We can disclose it in an executive session. And perhaps we will even require you to sign an NDA.
No, Mr. Secretary, I am sorry, but I am not, I have to say it, we are not under the executive branch,
No,
we are,
and NDA.
we are here exercising our oversight function, not as, not being required to sign an NDA. I believe that we can
apologize.
inquire into the institution. If you wish to do it in executive session, Mr. Secretary, I have no
Yes.
problems with that.
Yes,
I have no
we
problems
will-
with that.
we will
Because that
disclose it
complies
yes.
with the disclosure agreement, and transparency requirements. I refuse, and I don't think it is proper that you make me sign a non-disclosure agreement, Mr. Secretary.
I
So-
apologize, Your Honor.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I just want to make things clear. Ngayon, Mr. Senate President, can we schedule this executive agreement at a convenient time for all? Number two, Mr. Secretary, you can tell us with confidence that the prices that we have agreed on is competitive with the other prices that the other countries had to pay for the same brand and for the same kind of vaccine.
I'm sorry, I cannot do that because I do not know what the other countries pay because they have their NDA as well, okay? I just know that, we have done our best, and from unofficial sources, which I cannot fully rely upon, that we are more or less within the ballpark. And I will also inform you that our financiers, namely the ADB and the World Bank and the AIIB, are also checking that we are not overpaying. But they cannot disclose to us how much they are financing for the other countries. But that is a double check for us. So if they agree to finance us for this particular delivery from this particular supplier, I assume that they are doing also their due diligence and making sure that, I'm sure they will not finance us if it's overpriced.
Yes,
But
we do.
Secretary
we do.
Dominguez, with the permission of Senator Dilo,
Yes,
um,
please.
will you confirm the report that I have read, even a few months ago, that there is a country near the Middle East that pays even double so that they can get their vaccines ahead? They pay,
Yes.
they offer double
Yes.
the price to
Yes,
get their
yes.
vaccines ahead. Is that correct?
That is what I understand. In fact, I got an offer from them to sell us from a private company in that country to sell us vaccines at 5 times the price that we were paying for it.
Okay, yeah. I think that country is Israel, Mr. Secretary. It's no secret. It's a public knowledge. And the former Prime Minister made that decision in order to make the vaccines available early enough for him to prevent a long lockdown of his economy. And he made a statement that the risk that I took paid off because we didn't have to have a lockdown for a long period of time, which has destroyed our economy, which is happening to us, unfortunately. So,
Mr. President, with the permission of the minority leader, just very quickly, just one quick question. Can the secretary say the same for the payments made that aren't financed by loans?
I beg your pardon, I didn't understand it.
Because you said because our loan our loans are checked by the ADB, by the AIIB, and EIIB. Can you say the same for the payments made that were not financed by loans? The 8 billion from the GAA, for example.
When I compare the prices, individual prices that we paid through the loans and we paid through the GAA, it is roughly the same.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted that
Yes.
clarified, Mr. President.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
Continue, Senator
okay,
Dillon, you have less than a
yes,
minute.
within the limitations on the dominant disclosure agreement, can you give us an indication of the price ranges without mentioning the brand? Just let's say brand A, without saying what is brand A, brand B, that we at least we have a working knowledge of magkano ba talaga ang presyo nito. Uulitin ko lang po para po hindi tayo masabit sa NDA o non-disclosure agreement na inyong sinasabi.
Senator,
Kano, pero without saying the brand, without saying the brand.
yes. The price range of these vaccines that we have purchased range from $6.75 per dose to 27.59 cents per dose. That is the price
27?
range. 27.59 $27.59 and $6.75.
Sorry, sir, again. The last two. I didn't-
$6.75 per dose to $27.59 per dose.
Okay. Quite a disparity from
I
six.
don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
First of
Yeah.
all, sir.
No, I'm just talking about the figures that you gave.
Yes,
$6.
why you're asking me for the disparity? First of
No,
all,
I said I'm observing that there is a huge, wide disparity.
yes, there is.
And
Times
why is
4.
that?
Why?
Yes, why is that?
I
Why?
don't know the answer because but I can surmise. First of all, this is not a homogeneous product. Okay? These are different vaccines. Number one. Number two, there may be different pricing because of volumes purchased. Third, there may be different pricings because we know that pharma companies, as some pharma companies, price according to what the country what the country can pay. Okay, even in products that are not vaccines. Like for instance, I'll give you an example. You can buy some medicines here made in the US cheaper than you can buy it in the US. Some medicines you can buy here more expensive than you can buy in the US. So I am not privy to the reasons for the different pricing, but what I can surmise is that maybe different terms, different volumes, and different products.
Bottom line, as far as the vaccines are concerned, merong vaccine na mahal, merong mura.
Yes, sir.
Ano? To bring it down to the layman's language.
Tama
Ano?
po.
All right.
Tama.
Oh, may vaccine na may mahal, mayroong mura, natural po 'yan. At natural po 'yan. So tatlong brand lang naman ito, Sinovac, Sputnik at Moderna. Palagay ko mahuhulaan ko kung ano ito. Kung alin itong 2759, kung mag-alin. Tatlo lang yan eh. Anyway, so, Mr. Secretary, I will repeat. If we are asking for this, it's not because we're saying we're just performing our task of informing our people of how their monies are being spent. It is not, there is no implication of overpricing at this stage. We do not know that. But let me assure you, Mr. Secretary, that that is not my intention. I am just trying to put on the record for the information of our people the price ranges now.
Now, and Mr. Senator, please, I am one guy who really believes in transparency. And I am disclosing as much as I can given the NDA. And
Yes, I know that.
yes.
Yeah. In fact, the fact that you said you can make the revelation in an executive session is good enough for me.
Thank you.
Satisfies the requirement of transparency. Now, so let me see.
All right, please, you can wrap up, Minority Leader.
We hope, we appeal to the Secretary, the economic team to mag-usap at magpirmi na kung anong plano ninyo rito dahil ipapasa ninyo sa amin pagdating ng pag-resume ng session, kami ba ipapasa ba natin ang Bayanihan 3 o hindi? So sana magkaroon ng konti pang liwanag dahil 66 billion ang pinag-uusapan dito, at least kung irerepaso ninyo, siguro mas mababa ng konti, hindi natin alam, pero the fact that they are saying we need Bayanihan 3 and the indicative amount is 66 billion and we don't know whether there is a there is no certification, gives us, I hope it gives us reason to worry whether we will be able to achieve the goals of a herd immunity by the end of the year. But anyway, I will go to another point. Also, the 173 billion identified by Senator Recto of the and presented by the DBM, unreleased 173 billion for Bayanihan 2. Bayanihan 2 ends in 2 weeks' time. You don't need an extension. Will you be able to utilize the balance of 173 billion that continues to be unspent?
Mr. President, we did send the request to extend the Bayanihan 2 law.
Yes, and that extension, likewise, we don't know where we are in that regard. It is recommended by the IATF, or at least by the Secretary of Health, but we are waiting for the response of the economic team, perhaps, and the DBM. Anyway, so that too is an issue that needs clarity and a clarification, because 173 billion, gaya na ng banggit ni Senator Recto, ay malaking halaga yan na kinakailangan ngayon ng ating mga kababayan dahil milyon na nga ang walang trabaho at gutom at dumadami ang COVID cases sa Iloilo, Davao, Tacloban, and the like. And therefore, where is the sense of urgency, for lack of a better term? If we can now proceed to another item on the procured vaccines. How much of the vaccines have actually been paid for, Secretary Galvez?
Mr. Senator, this is Tony Dominguez.
Dominguez.
Mr. Senator, may I address the issue on
Yes,
the
please.
additional fund?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Secretary
Yeah.
Sani, please. Go ahead.
The additional funds required and your question on Bayanihan 3. These are two separate issues, Mr. President and Mr. Senator. The requirements of the Department of Health are quite separate from the pending legislation in Bayanihan 3. I believe that the discussions between the Department of Health and the Department of the Budget regarding their requirement for 66 billion have to be concluded separately from the discussion on Bayanihan 3, the proposed legislation of Bayanihan 3. So that's the first comment I have. Is that the discussions between DOH and the Department of the Budget should be held separately from Bayanihan 3. Secondly, the point of Bayanihan 3 is, and we have discussed this in the LEDAC as well as with in some detail with members of the House, where we mentioned the two things. Number one, the administration is indeed very concerned about the rise in hunger and in poverty. And we believe that we must address this issue squarely and soon. So in that manner, we are in favor of additional a piece of legislation focused on those two issues, hunger and poverty. The fiscal problem we have is that our deficit, our estimated deficit for the year is already at 9.3%.
Yeah.
And any additional expenditures like the 170 or 173 billion mentioned by Senator Recto and yourself have to have some source of funds. We are looking at additional collections over and above our budget. The President has already asked all the departments to look at their budgets and see which programs can be cut or postponed so that the money can be repurposed to fund this 173 billion. And if there are any potential revenue-raising measures that the House and the Senate will propose, then we are also open to that. But the principle is we have to keep our fiscal deficit at the point that it is now, which is our estimate is 9.3%. Last year, our fiscal deficit was 7.6%. So it will be very, very unsustainable if we have a fiscal deficit higher than what we estimate this year. So again, let me repeat, that's my second point. We are concerned. We are internally looking for the sources of funds to fund at least 173 billion. And this is focused on poverty and hunger. And we're looking for the funds for additional collections and potential repurposing of funds that are not currently being used or programs can be postponed or canceled. Mr. Senator, I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you, Secretary Sani. Just to follow up on one of the points you raised, if that 66 billion, which the Secretary of Health has manifested earlier, is needed between now, July, he said, July and December, because he was the one who said that he is wondering if it will be included in Bayanihan 3, and that's why we raised that point. So the question is, what happens then if it is going to be treated separately, and it pertains precisely to the vaccine rollout and the requirements of the DOH? Are we to then? We cannot. I don't think this is going to be included for next year's budget. This has to be acted upon when we resume in July. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Senate President, Mr. Senator, that is a matter I think that still has to be deliberated upon by the DOH, the DBM, and DBCC. And again, you know, as in all requests for funding, we have to make sure that we get the right priorities there. So my answer is that it will be deliberated upon seriously, and
Yes.
it does not have to be part of or it should not be part of the current proposed legislation, which is Bayanihan 3. Thank you.
Yes, I only raised that with Bayanihan 3 because of the time consideration and the constraints.
Thank you.
And therefore, we hope that can be resolved by the DBCC as soon as possible, so that when we resume in July, we can act on that and address precisely the challenges of the DOH with respect to the vaccine rollout. Thank you for the clarification, Secretary Sunny.
Mr. Sen-